All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to today's explainer. Picture this. You get a text that says, I am in the hospital. Now imagine that exact same text says, I am at the hospital. Wild, right? One tiny two-letter word literally changes the entire reality of the situation. In implies you're actually admitted as a patient, whereas at probably just means you're visiting someone. A single, slightly off preposition can completely change the meaning of a legal contract, a set of directions, or even just the vibe of a casual text message. If you've ever found yourself freezing mid-sentence, wondering, wait, am I in a bus or on a bus? Or is this happening at Friday or on Friday? Well, you're in the exact right place. Today, we're mastering prepositions. Non-native speakers famously struggle with these, and honestly, even native speakers get totally tripped up when they stop to think about them. I know the word grammar might sound a bit dry, but scratch that, throw that idea completely out the window. Prepositions aren't just boring rules, they are the hidden, incredibly powerful anchors of the English language. Without them, our sentences would just float away. So let's get anchored. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the power of prepositions. Second, prepositions of place. Third, prepositions of time. Fourth, other basic prepositions. And finally, number 5, we're going to put it into practice. So Section 1, the power of prepositions. Technically speaking, a proposition is a small but powerful word showing the relationship between a noun or a pronoun and other words. But, instead of thinking of them as rigid, textbook grammar terms, I really want you to think of them as your primary tools for mapping out reality. They answer the two most fundamental questions of human existence. Where is something, and when is it happening? They are essentially your GPS coordinates. Why is this so profound? Well, because without these tiny pieces of connective tissue, a sentence is just a chaotic pile of disconnected objects. Like if I say the book, the table, you have zero idea how those objects interact. Are they touching? Is one underneath the other? Are they even in the same room? Prepositions take those chaotic nouns and organize them into a coherent physical and temporal space. They're the invisible architecture holding our ideas together. Moving right along to Section 2, prepositions of place. Here, we're mapping out our big 3, foundational anchors, ein, on, and at. And notice how we're moving from large, enclosed spaces down to highly specific points. First up, we've got ein. The rule here is boundaries. Use ein for enclosed spaces or areas with defined borders. When you say, the cat is in the box, I want you to vividly imagine the physical cardboard walls surrounding that cat. Or, she lives in London. Visualize the actual geographic borders drawn on a map. You're placing something inside a container. Next up is on. The rule here is surfaces, flat things. The book is on the table. The wooden table is a horizontal flat surface supporting the book from below. The picture is on the wall. The drywall is a vertical flat surface interacting with the frame. The object isn't inside, it's directly interacting with the exterior plane. And finally, we have at. We use at for a specific point or exact location. Someone is at the door. They aren't inside the wood of the door, they aren't balanced on top of it. They're occupying that precise geographic coordinate in space. Think of at as the glowing red pin drop on your smartphone map. So, container, surface, pin drop. Ein, on, at. All right, brace yourselves for Section 3, prepositions of time. This brings us to a massive, mind-bending plot twist in the English language. We use the exact same words, in, on, and at, for time, but they behave just a little bit differently. For physical place, in means being physically inside the boundaries of London. But for time, in means something happens during the month of October. Cognitive scientists actually point out that human beings process time by mapping it onto physical space. Since we can't literally touch time, our brains borrow the blueprints from our physical reality to make sense of it. We take physical concepts, like being inside a container or standing on a surface, and we just stretch them right over the calendar and the clock. Let's see exactly how these physical metaphors translate into time. This brilliantly illustrates that shifting temporal scale. Just like physical space, we're zooming all the way from broad vastness down to razor-thin specificity. We use in for massive chunks of time, months, years, seasons, long periods. My birthday is in October. It snows in winter. Think of a season as a giant container holding millions of individual moments. Then, as the time frame shrinks down to a single day, we switch to on. Use on for days of the week and specific dates. We have a meeting on Monday. The party is on July 4th. Monday is essentially a 24-hour surface that you're standing on. Finally, when we shrink time down to an absolute pinpoint on a clock, we use at, exact moments. The movie starts at 8 p.m., I will see you at noon. So we go from the vast boundaries of in to the day-long surface of on, all the way down to the exact precision of at. Okay, let's jump into Section 4, Other Basic Prepositions. Let's step outside the big three for just a second to round out your spatial toolkit. These positional words act kind of like a stage director, placing actors exactly where they need to be to tell a story. First up, under. This dictates vertical alignment, positioned below. The dog is under the table. Picture the dog hiding away from the dinner guests, completely covered by the wooden surface above. Next, we have next to or beside. This establishes horizontal alignment. The bank is next to the pharmacy. They share a property line. They sit right shoulder to shoulder on the street. And finally, between. This one is a bit more complex because it actually requires at least two other objects to establish its position. She sat between her two best friends. She is safely sandwiched right in the middle of the group. We use these constantly and seamlessly to narrate our physical surroundings with absolute clarity. All right, Section 5, put it into practice. Let's see what you got. Okay, you've learned the rules, you've seen the maps. Here is your first interactive challenge. My English class is blank Tuesday. I want you to mentally guess the answer. Think back to the scale of time Tuesday represents in our framework. If you guessed on, you absolutely nailed it. Tuesday is a specific day of the week. It's a 24-hour surface, and as we just saw on our time scale, days and specific dates always require the preposition on. Next scenario, I left my keys blank the kitchen counter. Try to visualize the physical space of a kitchen counter in your mind. What kind of object is it? The answer is on the kitchen counter. Why? Well, because a counter is a flat surface. It doesn't enclose your keys with four walls. It supports them from below. Therefore, on is definitely our correct anchor. Now for a test of time. The train leaves blank, 3:30 p.m. Think about what 3:30 p.m. represents. Is it a long period, a whole day, or something much more exact? So the crucial point here is that 3:30 p.m. is a highly specific clock moment. It is a literal pinpoint in time. And for exact clock times, our rulebook dictates we must use at. The train leaves at 3:30 p.m. All right, our final challenge for today. She was born blank 1995. Consider the scale here. 1995 is an entire year. It's a massive, long period of time containing 365 individual days. So what's the anchor? In 1995, because it represents a vast, enclosed boundary of time, a long period. In is the perfect fit. If you got all of those right, fantastic job. You are successfully navigating the often confusing rules of English spatial and temporal anchors. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. How often do we seamlessly rely on these tiny two-letter words to build the entire framework of our daily communication? Without in, on, and at, we literally wouldn't know when to meet, where to look, or how we relate to the world around us. They truly are the invisible, yet entirely essential anchors of the English language. Keep an eye and an ear out for them today. Thank you so much for joining me to decode this, and I will see you in the next explainer.